Thank you very much for joining SUSHTECH Tokyo 2026 today. Now we will begin the session on From Pilot to Production, what Japan can learn from Germany in scaling AI for industrial impact. 実証実験から本格導入へ、産業インパクト創出に向けた AI スケーリングにおいて日本がドイツから学ぶべきこと。Okay, please welcome our speakers.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mabel. Thank you very much for joining us for this panel discussion today. I'm very happy to be sharing the stage today with three esteemed speakers on the topic of AI implementation from pilot to production and what Japan can possibly learn from Germany. So without further ado, I'd like to ask the speakers to introduce themselves. First, we have Dr. Carolina Kawakubo, President and Representative Director of NRW Global Business Japan. Please.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming to our presentation today. So I represent NRW Global Business, which is the trade and invest agency of the state of North Rhine-Westphalia. So what we do is we help Japanese companies who are interested in investing and doing business with Germany, and specifically our state. We basically serve as a platform and helping you to connect with the network in Germany. We frequently have different kinds of seminars, and we really try to support companies with any kind of questions that they have when they do business. We also do support of NRW companies in Japan, so it's two ways. So it's basically what the JETRO is doing on a state level. And I'm very much looking forward to the conversation today.
Thank you, Carolina. Next, we have Dr. Stefan Secker. Would you?
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Stefan. It's a pleasure being here. So I've been a manager of German high-tech companies in Japan for many years, among them Bosch Rexroth. I was the CEO of Bosch Rexroth in Japan, as well as the CEO of Carl Zeiss in Japan. As we speak, I'm the CEO and the co-owner of a consulting company. But this consulting company is dealing with Japanese companies and how they are introducing transformations in their business. And I'm very excited to talk about the topic of AI today. Thank you.
Thanks, Stefan. And finally, we have Tim, founder and co-CEO of Workist, an AI startup, also currently implementing it in Japan. Please, Tim.
Minasan konnichiwa. Thank you so much for having us here. I'm Tim. I'm one of the founders of Workist, and we automate business processes, especially in the manufacturing realm. We have around 200 customers so far, mainly in Europe and also in the US, and we have the first few here in Japan. We're trying to break into the market. More specifically, we're automating processes that have to do with sales administration. If you imagine, for example, being a wholesaler for office supplies, you get a lot of your purchase orders via email, for example, as neat PDF documents, but also as free text emails, or sometimes as just like a scan or something like that. And we have an AI that takes care of all that. It basically takes in everything that you have in your inbox and places the right information in your ERP system, for example, SAP.
Thank you, Tim. And I would also like to give you a brief introduction of Start2 Group. So I'm the Regional Director of Innovation and Product Strategy for Asia. What we do is we connect startups and corporates and government globally. So we support, for instance, German startups in expanding to Japan and also other countries, as you can see on the slide. We've been around for 17 years, started as a German company, but now we are present also in Asia and the US. On the corporate side, we support corporates with identifying and connecting with promising startups. Yeah, we also have a pavilion upstairs under Startup Germany, so please come by if you're interested to find out more. So on today's topic about helping startups or helping corporates in implementing startup technologies, not on the pilot phase, but also in implementation on production scale. So Germany and Japan has a lot of similarities, right? So Germany, for instance, have been globally known as for their deep expertise in engineering, while Japan, on the other hand, has been globally renowned for its manufacturing excellence. And when you put those two together, it's great, right? The combination is powerful. So Germany started digital transformation journey. A lot of companies started more than 10 years ago. So over the years, they have also have its fair share of learnings. And today's discussion is about what Japanese companies can possibly learn from German companies or not, as we will discuss further. So I want to share with you a short case study of one of our startups, ACNC, a German startup, with their collaboration with the automotive tier 1 supplier. So ACNC, they have a platform in identifying basically predictive maintenance, any anomalies in production process. So they work with one of the tier 1 supplier, so one of the large corporates, in identifying defects in the manufacturing of one of their equipment or their component in the automotive sector. So short example, without the ACNC, so if the company, the corporate has not had ACNC, they are not collaborated with them, they would have had to recall more than 180,000 units with this combustion incident that happened. However, because they had implemented the ACNC's solution, they only had to recall 6,500 units. This is a huge savings, right? And today we are interested to discuss how do we move, right? Not just in pilot phase, in exploring AI solution, but also in implementation. And how much does it value, how much is the value of implementing AI solution in corporate processes? So the first question, where is AI already delivering measurable value in industrial companies? And since we're talking about corporates, maybe Stefan, you have some examples to share?
Oh, yes, thank you very much. So first thing, I would like to give you feedback when you asked for what Japanese companies could learn. I'm not so sure how much could be learned, since there are more similarities than differences, I guess. So one very obvious area is assuming that industrial machinery is connected on the internet or by other means to a data center, to have got operating data of the machines to use this for preventive maintenance. Yeah, so these type of solutions are pretty common now. So the bigger question is not whether they are working or not, but whether the fundamental question of whether the customer wants to be connected or not is answered. So I have got some rough information about how many, for example, machine tools in Japan are connected directly to the internet, and the number is, how many do you guess? It is about 1%. 1%. Yeah, and this 1% may enjoy lots of AI solutions. So the number actually was on the rise during COVID, yeah, when there was no chance to visit the sites. But since now we are back to normal, the enthusiasm went back again.
And Tim, can you share with us some of the use cases? You know, how do your customers calculate the impact of your solution and therefore are willing to pay for a solution such as Workist?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Mabel. So we are a company that is active in work automation. So what we actually do is we deliver a solution that takes a workload away from our customer that normally would have been with its employees, and we fulfill it in a quality that is above human above what a human could actually deliver. And so that we don't have any manual errors while typing, whatever, no typos, no delays of shipments and so on. And so we actually measure time savings for our customers. This is the main driver for our price as well. So it's the workload and the time that people don't have to spend doing these kind of manual tasks. And I think that this is altogether the biggest impact that AI will have, is taking away manual and also error-prone tasks from people. In our case, in administration, but it also happens on the shop floor and so on, and giving people more time to actually do the more strategic work, figuring out what's really important. In our case, if you're a wholesaler, you finally have time to call your customers. You can finally offer them the new products that you have. You actually have that time to deliver more value to your customers. And I think that's a very important factor that AI will have. It's not that a lot of companies are already taking advantage of that yet, but I think that especially in Germany, the pressure by seeing competitors from China and from all over the world that are offering the same quality of products now, or a similar quality of products, the pressure to become cheaper, faster, more customer-centric is huge. And I think that's actually the truth for Japan just as well as for Germany.
But do your customers measure the time saved on doing a particular task, or the opportunity that can come with that extra time, right, that they've saved?
In a way, it's both. I mean, for us, actually the next step is even more interesting. It's not only the opportunity of the employees, but using all that data, all those insights, who is ordering what, in which quantities, at what time during a year, predicting what kind of products need to be sold tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. This is actually something that our system kind of has like as a byproduct, and being smarter about selling and who to sell to and how to sell faster and upselling and so on. These are all byproducts that now come out of this time saving. But yeah, in a way, we would actually have to charge higher prices because the time is now spent on really value-adding tasks.
Thank you. And Carolina, you've been in Japan for a long time, right? Where do you see the opportunities for AI adoption in Japan and also in Germany?
Well, I think the opportunities are huge because if I am honest, I think both in Germany and Japan, there is not much AI adoption yet. You know, I think both Germans and Japanese are very careful when it comes to anything that involves risk. And AI, by definition, is a black box, right? In many processes, you don't really know how you came to the result that comes out at the end. So honestly, what I've been seeing, both in Germany and Japan, is that until now, AI is used on a very rare, individual basis. Like I use it when I write emails, when I prepare presentations, when I do some kind of basically text-based work. That's already quite efficient. And I think this is a great opportunity for Japanese companies because it will really get rid of that language barrier. And I think a lot of Japanese companies, until now, that was the biggest obstacle to do international business, right? On the other hand, they also have to be prepared that international competition will be now much easier able to access the Japanese market. Until now, the Japanese language was really like a big wall that protected Japan, right? So I would say currently that is the way it is, that it's mostly like text-based, some easy calculations. But of course, the promise of AI is that you can really develop very smart intelligence for all kinds of customized solutions, like for all kinds of machinery. Like Germany and Japan both are very good at deep tech, manufacturing. But the problem until now was you couldn't really do like a specific software that just would serve your individual company case. And I think that is the perspective that we're looking at, that if you are open enough as a company to use AI, you have all those opportunities that you have now customized software, which is going to be 100 times more efficient than any kind of engineer. But I think we are still quite a bit away from that, and I think we need more courage of individuals and companies to really, leverage this?
Perhaps may I build up on this? I guess the adoption part must be a part of low risk. So if your first application risk at bankrupting your company, people will not use it. So therefore, applications that are not mission critical and probably also sensitivity of data is not so high, these are very good cases to start. Recently, I came across a real life problem where a machine builder, which is producing elaborated machines, which come with about 1,000 page of instruction manual and installation manual and so on. And this company, over their 40-year lifetime, has built about, again, 1,000 machines. So that means we are talking about 1 million pages of instruction manuals. So now, if a customer makes a random call and asks for something, who is able to answer that question? Yeah, and here AI is a perfect tool, and everybody agrees this is a huge benefit, because first, there is no person who knows all the stuff inside out, and exactly also, I don't want to stress that point too much, you will not find young people who enter this area. They will just expect that these answers come out of a system. And my expectation would be, if that company uses this system for a certain amount of time, just the trust becomes bigger and people will then venture for the next application.
Now, for the second question, why do many AI initiatives fail to move beyond pilots? Maybe we can ask Tim, where do things break between pilot and implementation and production?
All right, this is very interesting because when we started out, like every other AI startup or any other tech startup, of course we did a lot of pilots. And pilots for us meant R&D pilots. It was mainly sponsored by the R&D departments of some of our customers, for example, Deutsche Bahn, German Rail, a very conservative company. And even though it was very interesting to learn during these pilots, they were more or less a very specific agency-like development for this customer. And we, at some point, decided that we will not do any more pilots like that, not because we don't want to, it's very interesting to work on these problems, but these problems are so specific to the individual enterprise customer, and the market is just not going to be big enough. You cannot scale. You cannot build a $1 billion company based on one specific problem. So basically what we did is we went around, we looked at a lot of different document-heavy processes, for example, with Workist, and we found that the really big majority of manufacturing company has this kind of boring, mundane, but very stressful task of handling all of these purchase orders. We didn't know about that before, but we talked to a lot of companies. We did pilots with them. But after doing those pilots and creating a product out of that, we actually stopped doing any pilots because we believe that it does not make sense. The budget coming from R&D, which also often here in Japan, we're approached by bigger companies to say, hey, maybe we can do an R&D pilot. It's like we have engineers, they're expensive. We cannot let them work on these very specific problems. We need to have them work on scalable solutions. And I think therefore, a lot of startups make the mistakes of jumping on too many pilots and say, oh wow, we have this project with Siemens, we have this project with Toyota. The problem is you lose focus. You need to have the focus. And I think this is also something that I would like to share with corporates here at the fair. These kind of projects, they're really internal projects. You should, and probably already do, staff them on your own. Startups are just a cheap way, basically, for you to try something out. But startups cannot live on that. Startups have to live on actual projects. They have to live on budgets that come, for example, in our case, from the sales department or the operations department. And this is where I think, you can really bridge that gap. You have to quickly bridge that gap and then focus on projects that are very similar. Else you become an agency.
Yeah, this is very much in line with what I see as well. I've been in the ecosystem for more than 10 years. And 10 years ago, I can tell you, there are so many more startups that do this kind of customized POC for corporates. But over the last 10 years, I see them also evolved, where they also say no to certain projects and started building more repetitive kind of, basically, solutions scalable, right? Okay, and maybe for Stefan. What do corporates underestimate when scaling AI?
I'm answering from the point of view of manufacturing companies. So many manufacturing companies clearly see the technical possibilities and they develop ideas and usually they start the pilots and want like to invite you. Surprisingly, many of them work technically. And I guess the underestimating part is to bring them into the market. So especially manufacturing companies have built their processes on selling their products on technical specifications. So machines are sold on horsepower or RPMs or whatever. And now with AI as a different thing, we are talking about a different animal. So which may be closer to a service, which may come with different payment models. And here the complete company, including sales department, and including also the customers, are not ready, often ready for that, or at least it's underestimated. So that means you start and go into the market with strong hopes, and it does not work like you expect. And this is a kind of shock that needs to be absorbed. And many give up on that because it is underestimated that dealing with AI, especially on the customer side, means a bigger transformation. It's not just a technical new product. I think that's the key point.
And Carolina, what do you think companies should do to not get stuck with the experimentation but actually move on into implementation and scaling phase?
Well, I think, which goes a little bit in the same direction as the two speakers pointed out, the problem is to really define something that customers are willing to pay for. And especially with startups, both in Germany and Japan, many of them, they are coming from like the research side. You know, they come from a university or some research lab, and they have this really nice little gadget that looks really, really interesting, but they never really talk to people in the business or in the market who could tell them whether somebody will pay for it. And I think you can spend a lot of time just developing a product that nobody wants to have. And I think that is maybe the most crucial point from startups, and especially those that come from academia, to very early on talk to potential customers and ask them honestly whether there's money in it. Because at the end of the day, there are not that many urgent issues that you have in a company that people are willing to take the risk. And if it's like an AI-based solution, it is an even bigger risk perceived. So I think it's about the identification of something that the market is really wanting. And for that, I think it's important to talk to customers, to be on the ground. And maybe to add on that, one issue that I also see in the Japanese startup environment is that they often only look at Japan. And I think that can be a way straight to what they call galabicization, that you build something that works in the Japanese market because the Japanese customer is asking for it, but once you try to scale this globally, suddenly nobody wants to have it. And of course, I understand that as a startup, your resources are limited. You cannot start with 10 international offices. But at a very early stage, I think you should ask, is this something that I can sell beyond Japan? And that's also very important to gain investments, right? Because a global investor will not look at you as a Japanese company. They will look at you whether this is going to be scalable beyond one country. So I think really early on, looking at whether the market is starving for their product, I would say, is really crucial.
Thank you.
Maybe to add one thing, because you asked for the differences in German companies, but also in the US, for example. I feel like in the US, I never talked to any customer about a pilot. They have never asked me to do a pilot with them. They only asked to give it a try, basically, but not to invent something together with me. It feels to me that they are clearer about, like, they want to try out everything because they are all nervous. Everybody's nervous right now. Nobody knows how to implement AI fast enough. So everybody's nervous, but the way that they deal with that is they just try out as many solutions as possible and see what sticks and disregard what doesn't. And I think Germany is a bit more leaning towards that now. It's going in that direction, that a lot of companies are just getting nervous and they just try out a lot of AI tools and they see what really works. And then you have this value discussion on a very different level. But from the discussions I had so far, and also, of course, in Germany, when you come too much from this, we have this interesting idea where we should create a pilot, we should co-innovate, maybe we can share the IP in the end or whatever. This leads in a very different direction because the company is not really focused on the value creation. It's focused on solving a complicated problem, which is great for all of us. I think Germans and Japanese are very similar in the way that they want to solve and are great at solving complicated problems. And the US are a bit more, they're not going that much into details, they just try out. They just try out. And I think this is actually something to learn from, both in Germany and in Japan.
And highlighting some of the differences, perhaps what Germany is doing differently when it comes to implementation. Stefan, you've led German companies in Japan, also Japanese companies as well. Are there any differences or fundamental differences between the two?
Yeah, so if I would have a beer and I would talk to Tim, I would say they're very different, but the results are similar. So if you speak to a German customer, especially from the manufacturing industry, basically they know better than you. And they tell it to you one way or the other. And no product can ever be good for them. So because they are different and special. That does not happen in Japan. In Japan, the problem is rather that discussions about AI tools and decisions about that are at rather higher organizational levels. And these levels very often do not have the competence to judge. So, and as a result, also adoption is slow. Yeah, the Germans know everything better and therefore don't use it. And in Japan, there is a certain lack of I would say, competence on that. And very often still, I think the topic of AI falls in the broader scheme of IT. Yeah? And very often in Japanese companies, IT is the department that connects the printer. Yeah. That's it. Yeah, and the guy should not talk about strategy and important things. Yeah, so that means this strategic angle is very often not there. Yeah, it's even kind of more frightening or irritating if you promise that this will change your company, because nobody wants that.
That's a brilliant point, and I think it's 100% true. I think in Germany, even now today, we don't really take computer science and IT, we don't take it seriously. The only country right now really taking it serious is the US and probably China as well. And I think this is one of the reasons why I did not study IT back in the days, because everybody said yeah, but is that a real study? Is it something that you do at university? No. Okay, then I went on to do physics, which is good for nothing, by the way, but gives you perspective, I guess. But I think this is very important, that people start treating IT solutions as also a mastery and something that's extremely powerful. And it's not only the engineers, but it's the software engineers who are right now shaping this future. And we need to make sure that we have the best software engineers solving these problems in a software engineering kind of way, and not in the old ways that we have. For example, in Germany, one of the things is that in the big car manufacturers, the OEMs like Mercedes and BMW, the IT systems were not created by IT specialists, but by engineers, not software engineers, but mechanical engineers. This is why they also never created platforms. They've created tiny, nice solutions, very safe, very good, but not very future ready. And now they have a lot of problems because all the cool software engineers, they don't want to work for Mercedes, they want to work for Google, they want to work for Microsoft. They don't want to spend their time in Germany. And I think, like, as a structural thing, we have to find a way that we keep software engineer talent in our countries and really celebrate them, because they are really important, especially in the future.
Thank you. And Carolina, from an ecosystem point of view, between Japan and Germany, are there any factors in the German ecosystem that helps, you think, in the real deployment of AI in companies?
I think one strength of Germany in comparison to Japan is that Germany is relatively strong at bringing academic research to the companies. And you see that both in universities, like for instance, and university in Aachen. You know, we see a lot of, startups and scale-ups coming out of it. Because it's a technical university, and the professors are really used to always thinking about the business case and like bringing them together, the companies, and basically bridging that divide. And we also have the Fraunhofer Institute, for instance, which does exactly that. Thinks about how can we use academic research, bring it to the companies. And I think in Japan, this is still like more divided. You have universities, academia, and then you have the corporates. And now we are trying, to bring them together more. But in a way, there's like a pride, I think, also from professors that they are not too commercial, that they do their thing because it has itself a value. And I think for the ecosystem, that is exactly the point that you have to bring together, the technology with somebody who can bring it to the companies and then implement it there. And I hope that, in Japan we see more of those maybe also cooperations with Germany, because, this German ecosystem is also, of course, open to international companies. And I think there is so much good technology in Japan that still, is not commercialized yet, because you didn't have the network and maybe the people to connect you to the real business.
Thank you. And on to the key question. How can Japanese companies accelerate adoption through stronger collaboration with startups and global partners? Maybe first for Stefan, what is one concrete step that Japanese companies can do to integrate AI or work with startups?
If I could give the answer, we wouldn't need this show here, yeah, I guess. I guess the first thing is to reach out and to see what's outside in the world. So I'm following Germany from far away, so I'm just made sure that my favorite soccer club will get promoted next season. And I listened to our Prime Minister or Chancellor who visited China. Yeah, and he came back and gave a kind of very strong report saying that, wow, these Chinese people are just crazy. We are lost. Yeah, and I think the Honda CEO made a similar statement here in Japan. China has not changed so much, but he went there and he got first-hand impression, and perhaps that translates into some action. Yeah, so therefore, I think going out and seeing what's happening in the world would be probably a good, I would say, catalyst for change, since you can feel a little bit safe and comfortable if you're just sitting here around, because your neighbors left and right, they're doing the kind of same thing like you, and then maybe okay. But if you leave the country, go to other places, you soon figure out, oh, there's something happening. Yeah? And in the past, Japan could probably be comfortable in saying, yeah, this will happen overseas, it will not come to Japan. Yeah, but as Carolina said, I think the language barrier in particular was a strong fence and protection yeah, which works both ways, not coming in and not going out. Yeah, but I think with all the AI tools, the language thing is going down. Yeah, so that means even if you do not go outside, somebody will come. Yeah, and then you may be better ready.
Indeed. And Carolina, I mean, here we are at Sushi Tech, right? We discussed earlier this year is really international. So how do you think collaboration can help to accelerate adoption in AI?
Well, I think there's no way around collaboration because the age of having one national market only and serving only your national companies, this is long over. And I think if you want to be competitive internationally, you have to have global partners. And I think for a startup especially, you will need somebody to help you, for instance, enter Germany. And in a way, I think Germany and Japan are good partners because the mindset is very similar. And especially when we're talking about AI, I think the biggest hurdle is often, the data safety, the regulation, how would you make this safe for the general public? And I think the thinking of Germany and Japan in that way really has a lot of synergies. So this is an ideal partner situation to come together and develop technologies together as well. But yeah, overall, I would say that any company that is just trying to stay in their own little market, in their own country, they will not be able to compete. So it's all about networking. And I mean, for that, Sushi Tech, I think, is a great opportunity.
Yeah, perhaps, although this is too small of a stage, but I would expect that on a political area something make changes, yeah, because the topic of AI has such an importance that it's kind of political weapon. And especially in Europe, you do not miss a day that in the newspaper you see articles, who owns the data, does Microsoft read my email and all like that. Germany is switching off the DOCX format of Word files, yeah, to get a little bit independence. Yeah, so therefore I would expect that in this area, Germany and Japan may have common interests because they may both not want their data on Chinese servers and perhaps also not on Google servers so much anymore.
And have you observed any difference, openness in the direction of adopting or collaborating with international partners in recent years?
Well, I think Japan is really opening up because they see that the Japanese market alone is not enough anymore. I think Japan for a long time has been very comfortable having a good, robust domestic market. A lot of the small and medium-sized companies, they could just supply the big Japanese corporations and they were fine. And I mean, this is now completely breaking down and the population of Japan is shrinking. So if you want to have any kind of growth, you have to look internationally. So I think there is a big openness to work together with international partners. But I would say there are two challenges. The first one is often the language. I meet a lot of very interesting, small and medium-sized companies and startups every day, and they want to collaborate, but they don't have anybody on the team who speaks English. And if you are thinking about going abroad, you have to have somebody. So we always say, just hire a foreign intern. It doesn't have to be like a full-time employee, but you have to have somebody. And the startups that we worked with that are internationalized, successfully, they often have a mixed team. So I think it's very important to really integrate that in your team from the beginning, not only have like the Japanese mindset, because they are simply some things that you might not even perceive if you've never been abroad. So this is the first one. And the second one is, I think there needs to be a little bit more flexibility in adapting your product. And I see this both with Germans and Japanese companies alike. So positively put, I think we have pride in our products. Both Germany and Japan come from a long legacy of mechanical engineering and like really top-rated technology. But I think in today's world, you have to be very dynamic in pivoting and adjusting what you can offer. And sometimes, like also I think Tim explained, you start with an idea and you find out, okay, this idea doesn't work. So you have to kind of adjust that. And that's also very important when you collaborate, that, in the beginning you might have one idea, but then it turns out to be something different. And I think both Germans and Japanese can be maybe learning a little bit of the dynamism that we see maybe more in China and the States.
Thank you. Tim, you want to add?
I think one thing has changed in the recent years, and that is, and especially this year, and that is that urgency has finally reached Germany and I think Japan as well. There's finally a sense of urgency that we need to act fast in order to kind of get with the times. And I mean, it goes a bit against the, what you just said, Stefan, because you said there's common interests, and that always goes a bit in the direction of you to build your own solution for only Germany, for only Japan, and so on. I think that these kind of attempts, we had like one failed attempt now in Germany, Aleph Alpha, which was like an LLM trying to compete with ChatGPT and others, and miserably failed because it was completely underfunded and had no chance there. I think it's not the time to think only what you can do now. I think it's the time to try out as much as you can. It is urgent that we find ways to implement AI in every sense, in every area of our business, to save money, to be faster, to be better than the competition. The competition is coming at us very, very fast. If we want to be proud of our products that we have in Germany, that we produce in Germany, I mean, I don't see cars being manufactured in Germany in 10 years. And that's horrible news, because it was the biggest industry in Germany and the source of most of our wealth. And I think that to protect the source of our wealth as Germany and as Japan, we need to find quick ways to use AI. And I would not go at this in the perfectionistic way that we have in us, right? So it doesn't have to be the best solution in the beginning, but you have to try out as much as possible. You have to do it a bit like the Americans. You have to throw a lot of things at the wall, you have to see what sticks, and everything is going to accelerate a lot. And I think that actually the models that we have now in China, the models that we have now in the US, they will only get better and better. And I don't think sovereignty is the big issue. The issue is getting it into the hands of as many talented people as possible in Germany and Japan, and just trying to make as much out of it. Because otherwise the problem is that the old corporates will be overtaken not by OpenAI or whatever. No, there's going to be AI first companies that start with a handful of employees, but superb customer service, because everything is done by AI. They have a completely different cost structure, meaning no cost structure. They are completely flexible. If the market changes, they can change in a second. But big corporates like Mercedes and so on, they just can't. They show that just right now. They have huge headcounts. So I think that being able to really do as much as possible, be agile, and don't shy away from just trying out solutions. Even American or German or wherever they come from, Chinese solutions, to be better at what you actually do right now.
Thank you. Now we have 3 minutes left, so let's have 1 minute each as a wrap up. So for Tim first, so there are many Japanese startups around as well, right? So what should startups stop doing?
I said that before, don't do R&D pilots. Try to find a problem. I mean, it doesn't mean that you cannot do a lot of research. Please do a lot of research. Go to customers, visit them, find out exactly what their problem is, but find a problem or choose a problem that is not a singular problem. Find a problem that is shared among a lot of B2B companies. Same for B2C, yeah? Find something that a lot of people are struggling with. And I think then it's not so much a pilot and another pilot and the next pilot, but then it's really building a product and then selling that product and scaling it.
Thank you. And for Carolina, what should ecosystems improve on in terms of Japan? Where do you see opportunities for improvement to enable this adoption of AI across the board?
The first thing is what I already mentioned, connecting academia more with real business. But I would also say what's really important is that link to international actors. Because a lot of the startup scenes that we've seen in Japan, which are growing and flourishing, are still very local. Like when I go even outside of Tokyo, like to Sapporo or Fukuoka, there's lots of support from the government. Everybody wants to push those startups, but they are still very domestic. And I hear also from a lot of investors that they often tell those Japanese startups, well, first build something in Japan, and then a couple of years down the road, you might go international. And I think that's very dangerous. So, if you want to have some impact, if you want to scale, also for AI, you have to more, have this international view right from the start.
Thank you. And finally, for Stefan, what must corporates change?
Very easy. In the remaining 20 seconds, just get more competence in the boardrooms when it comes to AI. Yeah, because it starts at the top.
Okay, thank you very much. So thanks everyone for joining us today with this panel discussion. I hope this has been beneficial. And if you are interested in connecting with us, as I mentioned, we are upstairs on the second level, or actually level 4, at Startup Germany Pavilion. And Carolina, it's also a close partner of ours. Stefan is also a mentor, actually at Start 2. And Tim Work is also an alumni. So very happy to connect everyone. And this is our contact details. So I'm actually based in Singapore, but my colleague Alex Odajima is based in Tokyo. So we look forward to the connection. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone. You enjoyed this session. And once again, please join me in thanking our speakers. Thank you. Please step down.